Good evening, everyone, and thank you all very much for coming to this virtual meeting of Kensington and Chelsea's Planning Applications Committee this evening. You're all very welcome, and thank you for engaging with this important process during this difficult period. The government published regulations allowing councils to hold virtual meetings a few months ago, and we will be following the relevant guidance. My name is Charles O'Connor, not John O'Connor, as per the agenda. That's a mistake, I'm afraid. I'm the Vice Chairman of the committee and chairing this evening's proceedings. Just for the avoidance of doubt, I'm not, as far as I know, related to, and I've never knowingly met the applicants. It's pure coincidence that we share the same surname. I'm joined by 4 of my fellow councillors who, together with me, will be taking the decisions this evening. Please could I ask each of the councillors to introduce themselves to everyone present at the meeting. I'll call out your names, and if you could put your cameras on, please, and introduce yourselves, I'd be very grateful. First of all is Walla Idris, who's my co-vice chairman of this committee, and Walla will take over if my connection fails, but hopefully that won't happen.
Good evening. Hi, everyone.
There's Walla. Excellent, thank you very much. Second, Linda Wade, please.
Good evening.
There's Linda.
Linda
Thank you
Wade.
very much.
Please.
And Hamish Adurian, please.
Good evening, everyone. Councillor Hamish Adurian.
Can we see you there, Hamish? Just to check.
Is it not on? Sorry about that. Hello there.
There we are. Thank you very much. And Kasim Ali.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kasim Ali, Councillor for Delgado, and I have nothing to declare. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much indeed. And we are also joined by the council officers this evening, the senior of whom present this evening is Derek Taylor. Derek, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Derek Taylor, and I'm the Deputy Head of Development Management.
Thank you very much. And Ronaldo Colalilo, who is presenting the 2 cases this evening.
Yeah, I'm Ronaldo Colalilo. I'm one of the senior officers for the North Team Area, Development Management, RBKC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we're also joined by officers from the legal team and from governance. Thank you very much to them. If any other officers need to speak during the meeting, I will introduce them. I've been asked to make sure that not too many of us are on video unless it's absolutely necessary to save bandwidth, so please switch only to audio unless you're about to speak, when we would like to see you on camera, please. If you've attended one of our meetings before, you'll understand and recognise our procedure for considering applications. I'll explain the steps as we go along. I would just like to emphasise at the outset that all the councillors have received the reports, the representations, the voluminous submissions from the parties and objectors, and also the addendum report, which has been circulated. I'd remind colleagues that, as ever, we must hear all of the discussion of a case before we can participate in making a decision. So if your connection fails for more than a second or two, will you please let me know, because you probably won't be able to participate in the decision on that particular case. There are no apologies as far as I'm aware. Are there any declarations of interest, colleagues? I know there aren't from Councillor Ali, but from any of the others?
No, thank you.
That sounds like a no. And can I just check with Tom and Anne in governance, have we, am I meant to be signing these minutes of the April meeting?
Yes, please, Chairman.
And I've seen those and approved those before, haven't I?
Yes, you have seen them and approved them previously.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, I've already reviewed these minutes. Actually, sorry, there are 2 sets of minutes I've been sent here. Those are for the meetings on 28th of April and on the 23rd of June, both of which I chaired, and both sets of minutes I've double checked for accuracy. May I please sign those as a true record?
Yes. Thank you.
I'll take that as a yes. Thank you very much. I'll provide those to the governance team shortly. And then our running order this evening, we've only got we've got 3 applications, 2 related to 10 Norland Square and 1 related to Pembridge Mews, and we'll take them in that order because there are many more speakers involved in Norland Square, and so it makes sense to take them in that order. So I think without further ado, we will hand over to Ronaldo Colalilo, who will give us a presentation on 10 Norland Square, and then we'll talk to the parties. Thank you.
Yeah, so good evening all. I'm going to present then number 10 Norland Square, which is the main case for tonight. So here we have a location plan. The property is number 10 Norland Square on the eastern side of the square, highlighted in red, as you can see. Just so that you know, the main affected properties are to the south, number 9, and number 11 to the north. Number 11, entails, number 11 is the most affected of the properties, of the 2 of them. So here we go. Existing lower ground floor plan. So this is existing lower ground floor plan at number 10. So as you probably know by now, you have read the committee pack. This application relates to the replacement of the single-story infill extension at lower ground floor level with a double-story substantially lightweight infill extension. And on top of that, it proposes to erect or reinstate an additional level on top of the existing rear closed wing. So this is existing lower ground floor level. As you can see, there is an outline of an infill extension towards the right and bottom right side. There is an existing infill extension in there. Now we are going to the proposed drawing, which shows a replacement rear infill extension, which is now marginally set back. So that is an improvement in there, plus associated internal alterations to the property. Then at raised ground floor level, to the top right-hand side, there is the rear closed wing of the property, or the position of the rear closed wing of the property. And you can see an outline of a pergola structure plus some steps going to the garden. So that is the aspect of the proposals which has attracted the most attention. And then to the south, we can see there is the roof, bottom right-hand side of the screen. There is the roof of the existing infill extension at lower ground floor level. So, we are proceeding now. So this is the proposed raised ground floor level now. So now instead of the pergola, top right-hand side, we have a reinstated or erected additional story onto the rear closed wing, and towards the south, towards the bottom right-hand side, we can see a shallower infill extension with a roof terrace on top. And yeah, so this is the proposed raised ground floor level. So now we are going to the elevations. So as you can see, this the number 10, as it stands, features a single-story infill barrel-shaped infill extension that would be replaced by a double-story recessed infill extension. And then to the side, we can see the pergola structure adjoining the number 11 to the right-hand side of the screen, which would be replaced by a solid structure in there, solid wing. So we go to the proposed drawings now, as we can see. So the infill extension in the middle, and then the double story, now the proposed double story rear projecting wing in there. So this is the proposed drawing. To the right hand side of the screen, I have included that drawing which shows the adjoining number 9. There is a small window, and so the proposals will be slightly set away from there. But when you look at the rear elevation, you don't see that. So let me just see here. Yeah. So proceeding to the next part of the presentation. So here it's a cross section of the existing pergola structure and rear closed wing. So the history for the site indicates that there used to be until 1959 a double-story rear closed wing at the property, and that was marked for demolition. At that time, it is presumed that they have built this pergola, and now they are proposing, the current owners are proposing to rebuild that extension in there. So here we have a view of the property marked in red. We can't see much in there because presumably this photograph may have been taken in the winter, maybe slightly late in the day, but we can see number 10 behind the tree with the barrow-shaped infill extension. The pergola is not very much visible, and then towards the right you can see all lit up. That is number 11, by the way, which are the main objectors for the application. So we can go and see here. This is an existing view of number 10, a longer distance view showing number 10 and also number 9 to the left-hand side, and number 11 to the right-hand side. And the photographs to the right-hand side shows a close-up picture of the pergola, presumably in the winter time when there are no leaves to the beautiful exterior which is in there. But yeah, so let me proceed to the next one now. So this is a view of number 11, Norland Square, with their extension. And now I'm going to show a close-up. That is the same. And now a close up. So we can see this is a view from number 11 looking towards number 10. So number 10 is the application site, and we can see the main disputed area in there, which is the proposals would entail the raising of the parapet wall closer to where the gentleman is standing over there, so as to reinstate or build the rear closed wing at that raised ground floor level. So here is a view from the breakfast room of number 11, looking out into the garden and showing a proportion of the side wall which would be raised to the right-hand side of the screen. To the left-hand side, we can see a partly glazed door which would be affected by the development. And now I think I will just proceed and show, and you can these photographs have been taken by previous officers assessing the case. So this is a roof light on the breakfast room of number 11. So substantially glazing in there. Yeah, so I think this is my presentation. So perhaps we can proceed if...
Thank you very much indeed, Ronaldo, and that's very helpful.
Thank you.
And now what we do next is we hear from the objectors, and the way this works is normally it would just be 3 minutes for the objectors, and then there would be 3 minutes for the applicant. But when one of our councillor colleagues is involved and speaking on behalf of local residents, we extend that time, and the councillor also has 3 minutes. So between the objectors, including Councillor Mills, they have up to 6 minutes. It's up to them whether they choose to do that 3 and 3 or how they choose to do it. But 6 minutes for the objectors, and I will let you know when that 6 minutes is up. So when you're ready, please.
Hello, my name is Sophie Malincroch. I'm an occupant and owner at number 11 with my husband Timothy Raw, and I'm going to be making the objection. I'll start now, if I may. Our house will suffer an oppressive sense of enclosure from an extension to create a laundry room. Instead of an open outlook, the two most frequently reused rooms, conservatory and study, will be blocked by a solid brick wall, creating a tunnel view of the garden. Whilst the applicants will gain a new and much larger ground floor terrace, we will lose the amenity of our existing terrace. It gets all the south sun, which will be blocked by a solid brick wall. Our terrace isn't even mentioned in the report. The harmful sense of enclosure does not comply with policy CL5. A first floor extension at our home was refused because of the oppressive outlook it would cause for number 12. The planning inspector said, at such close proximity, this outlook would be oppressive to a degree that would harm the amenity of the neighbouring occupiers and cause unacceptable harm to their living conditions. Our ground floor rooms will suffer the same fate, regardless of a second study window. The inspector also acknowledged the potential to remove overlooking from our existing terrace did not outweigh the concerns which would be a constant and permanent result of the proposed extension. The report inaccurately states that there will be some marginal loss of light. In fact, we will lose 50% of our existing sunlight across the year to our conservatory and all of our winter sunlight well below the RE guidelines. That's not marginal. Our conservatory skylight, which you've seen a photograph of, does not mitigate against the absolute loss of all our winter sunlight, as the sun is too low in the sky to come through it. Our south face glazed door will also lose 50% of its winter sunlight, and vegetation or wisteria on the pergola should be disregarded as a matter of planning guidance. There are material inaccuracies in the report. Historic England listed the terrace as a whole. The report wrongly asserts that number 10 is part of a distinctive group of houses, 7 to 11, but those houses are not separately listed and have no separate heritage value. Whilst the 1865 OS map indicates lower ground floor closet wings existed, 7 to 11 did not originally feature two-storey deep closet wings as asserted. Number 11 and 12's ground floor closet wings have been dated to 1895 or later, and that data was accepted by the planning inspector at appeal. To call them original or early additions is misleading and wrong. The report ignores evidence submitted by us, including structural survey drawings, which disprove the assertions made. Historic England advises that original closet wings should always be preserved. Number 10 currently has its original shallow closet wing at ground floor intact. It should be preserved as is rather than masked by the proposed extension. If the applications are granted, 7 to 11 will still not be uniform or homogeneous. 7 and 8 have first floor closet wing extensions, as does 12, and 9, 10 and 11 do not. The proposed French doors off the ground floor extension and stairs to garden would be unique in the terrace and incorrect in heritage terms, and Dr. Doggett is available to answer questions. The double height infill does not comply with the neighbourhood plan or Historic England's guidance. It's higher than our conservatory, the terrace is deeper, the design is not subservient, and the setback does not match what was required of number 9 and 11. The impact on our home will be disastrous and permanent, and the applications should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mallinckrodt. Is Councillor Mills going to talk? I hope so, because extra time was only given on the basis that she was going to.
Yes, I am going to speak.
Right, thank you. When you're ready.
Oh, sorry, were you not, was that the full, I've got Stephen Turville and Nicholas Doggett here. Am I going next?
I'm told that Stephen Turville is not wanting to speak, though I suspect he may be available for questions. I don't know about Nicholas Doggett, but I mean, that's up to you, between you as a group of objectors. But I think if we hear from you next, please, Councillor Mills.
Yes, certainly.
Sorry, Dr. Doggett is not speaking, but available to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and good evening, committee, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak this evening. I speak on behalf also of Councillor Lindsay, who can't be with us this evening sharing the slot because he's got another meeting. In particular, he's asked me to reiterate a common shared view of both of us, that the lack of a site visit, we believe, is disadvantageous in this particular planning application. And the reason that we say that is because we believe that the committee needs to see the whole aspect of Norland Square. It's a listed square. It's got 3 listed terraces on all sides of the square. It is listed front and back. It's quite unusual to have listings like that, and therefore we would like to invite the committee to regard this application and as basically, if it were granted, it would have a cumulative harmful impact on the buildings at the back. I say that as part of the Kensington Society and Norland Conservation Society observations. They too have asked me to reiterate this point this evening, that you cannot treat the terrace piecemeal. You've got to look at the thing as a whole, and you've got to look at the very wide aspect that was created initially on the Norland estate. The back of this terrace is visible from far and wide, and which is why we wanted very much for you to come down and have a look. And that is a loss of public benefit, and your officers are obliged to explain that loss of public benefit to you. There have been a plethora of applications in this area, and we believe that if they continue to be granted without some sense of reference to the Norland Neighbourhood Plan, you're going to just continue to have a continuation of harm to the terrace, which is a planning ground. And furthermore, why would you bother to list a square, list terraces, put them in a conservation area, have them subject to Article 4 directives, conservation directives, heritage directives, and then simply go ahead and alter the back of the buildings, which are as precious to us in Norland as they are. We'd like the committee to be very, very aware, as you will have seen, and I hope that you had time to read the letter, that our neighbourhood plan, we believe, is simply being marginalised, sidelined by officers in these pre-planning application procedures, which allow nobody in the room with them, including the people, amenity societies or councillors, so that the other side of the argument can be put. So we have been. We would like you to take that point on board. We'd like you to look at the neighbourhood plan and understand that this present application it contravenes N3C, N3D. It's a bigger extension. It's a deeper terrace into the garden. It's not subservient to the host building, and that is contrary to our plan. You've seen the history of the plan. It is well consulted on.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. I'm going to have to ask you to draw your comments to a close because you're at your 3 minutes.
That's very kind of you. If I may just say that in terms of the neighbour, I have visited the neighbour at number 11, and we are familiar with the buildings at the back on that side of the square, and there is harm in our view, and those who have visited number 11, that it will encroach upon the very small terrace and small study that is there, and there will be a loss of amenity to number 11 in particular. Thank you very much, committee, for hearing me tonight on behalf of residents and local conservation societies.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Mills. That was very helpful. Now, having heard the objectors, we give the same 6 minutes to the applicants, and I understand we have Mrs. Kasparian, the agent of the applicant, and Mrs. Brodie, a solicitor acting for the applicant. So you have between you 6 minutes, and when you're ready, please.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Brodie, planning solicitor at Russell Cook. Sarah Kasparian, the planning consultant, will address you shortly on the planning merits of the applications. I form part of the project team and have been advising in respect of the applications for planning permission and listed building consent. In particular, I have reviewed the applications, provided advice on procedure, and reviewed the officers' committee report. I am available to answer questions, but please note that questions on legal procedure should be directed to your legal advisor. There is just one legal matter that I wish to draw to your attention. As you'll be aware, and as is explained in paragraph 6.43 of your committee report, there is a statutory duty on decision makers to pay special regard to the desirability of preserving and enhancing the character and appearance of a conservation area and the desirability of preserving the historic interest of a listed building and its setting. The courts have clarified that this means, as a matter of law, the heritage impacts in such cases must be given considerable importance and weight. You'll be used to applications coming before you where the council's heritage specialists have identified harm caused to the historic interest of a listed building. Where that is the case, as you all know, you have to weigh that heritage harm, giving it the statutory weighting, against the public benefits of the scheme. Here, the statutory duty weighs in favour of the proposal, specifically in relation to the rear outrigger extension. This is because the council's heritage experts have identified the extension as having a benefit in heritage terms by reinstating the historic form of and rhythm of extensions across the group of listed properties, paragraph 6.7 of the report. Therefore, the council is required to give considerable importance and weight to this benefit when assessing the planning balance. I'll now pass over to Sarah Kasparian. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm the agent working on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. O'Connor on these applications. The applications have been recommended for approval, which are wholly justified in terms of the officer's committee report, considered in the context of the site's planning history and the position in the terrace. My client, the applicant, and homeowners of number 10 have engaged with officers in 3 pre-application discussions within 18 months. Most recently in February, we had productive discussions with officers about the same proposals in front of us today, working together to resolve detailed issues related to the listed building. The proposals relate to relatively minor works to the internal layout and detailing of the lower and upper ground floor levels, in part to correct previous changes that were harmful and partly to refurbish the house, replace the conservatory and extend the outrigger. Officers have set out in the report how the extension would reinstate the missing upper floor of the outrigger. It is recognised that, although not original, they are historic and form part of the character and rhythm of the listed terrace. This is of public benefit in heritage terms and should be given special regard in decision making as required by statute, which Amanda explained before. Having also reviewed decisions for other houses with similar proposals nearby, we believe that the council have been consistent in their decision making to date and trust that members will follow their officers' professional recommendations for the current proposals at number 10. With regard to daylight and sunlight, the minor impact on outlook and daylight for the residents at number 11 in their own extensions granted in 2015 is the same impact the outrigger at their house gives to their neighbours at number 12, and the same as the outrigger would have had before it was moved in the late 1950s. What is being applied for through these applications reflects similar extensions at number 11 and also the existing pattern of development and outriggers at the rear of the terrace. Our daylight consultant reviewed the plans for the extensions during the preparation of the applications in 2019 and prepared the supporting letter submitted with the applications. This reflected the negligible level of impact on neighbouring residents in accordance with BRE guidance. The neighbours at number 11 had their own report done on daylight, which did not accurately assess the situation in relation to BRE rules and the assessment of dual aspect rooms, the glazed roof of the infill extension and the south-facing windows. We fully endorse the view of officers in their assessment and their conclusions. In summary, we have submitted comprehensive applications which are in accordance with the development plan and the neighbourhood plan and in full support of officers with whom we have engaged in pre-application discussions. The proposal should be considered in the context of the planning history of number 10 with its existing conservatory and extant permission for an infill extension. The proposals reflect very similar extensions nearby, including recent extensions at number 11, and would fit comfortably in the terrace with a consistent pattern of outriggers. We therefore request that the Planning Committee vote in favour and in accordance with officer recommendation, granting planning permission and listed building consent for this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kasparian. That's very helpful. And now, having heard from both sets of the objectors and the applicant, we have the opportunity as a committee to put questions to those parties. And preempted me. Could you please indicate that you'd like to ask a question by putting a Q in the chat for the meeting, which is what Councillor Wade did first of all. And so could I invite Councillor Wade, first of all, please, to ask her question, and could you indicate to whom you're addressing your question?
My first question is to, I think it's the owners of number 11, and then I have a question for the people representing number 10. Looking at the diagrams of the rear of number 11, it would appear that you have a modern extension. I just wondered if you could give me some detail about when you actually did that work, and whether that was, what procedures you went through, because it looks very modern in comparison. Yes, that, because the closet wing appears to be number 11, the rear, that one, yes, please. The closet wing appears to be the shallow one, is that it?
Yes.
And it's painted white, but you have an infill which looks quite modern. When was that done?
Perhaps I could explain. The Infill Conservatory was originally granted in 1991 to the previous owner of number 11. And it was deemed an exception on the terrace, and I am correct in saying I believe that there isn't another conservatory along the terrace. When we acquired the property, we applied for permission, and we asked first if we could extend it, and were told we could not. And we were told what we could do was redesign the existing Infill Conservatory along the same footprint as was there before. So it's, if I may correct one thing from the previous speaker, it isn't a new extension. It was just redesigned in the same location as when it was. And what we did was reduce the height so that the height of the conservatory is under our closet wing. And the ground floor closet wing that you'll see painted white has been dated to 1895.
Because I noticed that in one of the recommendations or the conditions for number 10, the removal of the paintwork was considered to be an advantage. Was that ever raised with you?
Our paintwork was there before.
All right. If I could possibly ask a question of the people of number 10. I think that the main issue here is the outrigger. How viable would the plans be if that didn't occur? How would that, because you've got a lot of internal work.
The proposals come as a package. So the part of the justification for the outrigger extension is that it would reinstate the historic plan form.
Yes, but I'm saying that appears to be one of the main objections. I'm asking you, how viable would the plan be if that was removed?
It's not a viable option. It all comes as a package together, and overall the scheme kind of balances out in terms of heritage value.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wade. Councillor Durian, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got two questions for Mr. Colarillo.
Can I, sorry, Councillor Duran, just because you're relatively new to this committee, without wishing to patronise you, we have the opportunity to put questions to officers in a second. At the moment, it's just questions to the two parties.
No, that's fine. The Councillor Wade already asked the question I had for the applicants. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Idris.
Yes, Councillor Wade asked part of my question, but the other part is actually to the owner of number 11. How often do you use? I mean, do you use your breakfast room just for breakfast, or is it a sitting room? Also.
Sorry, am I on video now? We use it constantly. It's no exaggeration to say with the most used room. It goes off the kitchen, the children do homework, we watch telly in there, I work from home, and my study's affected as well. So it is the most used room in the house.
So
we constantly use it.
You can't. Okay, all right. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Idris. You can come back for more in a minute if you'd like.
Yeah.
Councillor Ali, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the objector, number 11. I would like to know, would you be interested if the development were similar to yours, rather than the one now that's blocking the view of the sun, and also for basically affecting your house, and whether it's lighting, whether it's the concrete wall? Would you be accepting a proposal, roughly? I'm just talking about now a hypothetical, roughly that's similar to yours, because it would be unfair to have some sort of a modern extension or development into your own property while objecting others. Will that be the case, or you completely do not want your neighbour to have a chance to develop their own home?
Sorry, if I respond, I'm Tim Raw. To be clear, our closet wing has been there since 1895, so we didn't do that. The only thing that, when you talk about our extension, was we replaced an existing conservatory with a modern one. So there was no impact on our neighbours in any direction. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we didn't have any impact at all on our neighbours. Our original proposal, we wanted to go up onto the first floor, and we were told no, because it would have an impact on our neighbours.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, may I ask another question, or a question to the developer, please?
Please do, yeah.
Thank you. You've said you have a pre-meeting with officers, and you've secured approval from the officers. Was there any members of the local residents in the area present while you had that meeting? And if not, as we know from the report now, there wasn't. Were you trying to do just with the officers, or we just wanted to ignore your neighbours and everyone else that has been affected by the development you proposed? And what was the reason you left out?
Thank you. So we did 3 pre-apps over the last 18 months, which informed other applications for listed building consent as well. The last one followed the withdrawal of a planning application and application for listed building consent last year, which was very similar. Unfortunately, it had to be withdrawn because of conservation concerns. So the last pre-app was purely related to listed building alterations, very detailed in terms of clarifying where services would go, and the detail of joinery and that kind of thing. And I understand that pre-app advice is uploaded on the council's planning portal, and so you can see that advice that we received at that time. We did also engage with neighbours. We did have a meeting with the residents of number 11 and number 9. That was before the previous planning application, and we did write to them again to let them know that we were resubmitting the applications. And we did come to an agreement with number 9 and made account for their window there to the left of that plan. And yeah, that was the extent of our consultation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have a few questions, if I may. I'd just like to develop the point that Councillor Ali made, that Mr. Raw answered. Mr. Raw, you answered very skillfully, if I may say so, by reference to the impact on neighbours. But I think the point that Councillor Ali was getting at, and the point that I would like to hear you on, is it effectively the case that you would like the applicants not to have what you yourselves have?
Well, the obvious answer is yes, in the sense that lots of our neighbours at number 12 have a first floor extension. When we applied for it, we said, but look, no, when we accept that, so in a sense, it's not a question of, you know, we have got it. Lots of people have first floor extensions, lots of people have all sorts of things, but our objection is to the fact that we believe that the first floor extension that is being proposed to be constructed at number 10, at the very most has existed for about 50 or 60 years. It wasn't original plan form. It wasn't the structure that was actually listed in 1969. And the idea of constructing this is going to have a material impact on our amenity.
Thank you very much. And could I just ask you also to talk, or your wife, about what was rejected when you yourselves went for planning quite recently, I think. Was it something rather different to what is currently proposed by number 10?
There were elements of the first floor, as my husband has described. We sought to achieve the same as number 12 and were told no, because it would detrimentally impact their amenity, and quite understandably so. We also asked to extend the conservatory and terrace to 50 centimetres from behind our existing closet wing, and we were told that we had to recess the infill extension both at lower ground floor and ground floor level to match what had been required by conservation officers of number 9. So our lower ground floor extension is set back 1400 mil, as is number 9's, and our conservatory at ground floor level, which was only allowed to be modified by design but not extended in terms of footprint. So we had to do what was there before. We were told we would not have got permission for a new conservatory at ground floor level. That was also required to be set back 1400 mil and lower than our existing closet wing extension.
I see. Okay. Could I ask Mr. Colalilo, just to bring up the photographs of the backs of the buildings, if you could, please.
Backs of the building, yeah. Okay. So we
have you got one that shows 10, 11, and 12? There we are, I think. I see. So, Mrs. Malincrot or Mrs. Raw, perhaps you could explain by reference to this photograph roughly. So you were applying for something, an additional story on top of your white outrigger there to take it up, presumably not as high as the one at number 12 that we can see there. Is that right?
No, number 12's got 2 floor. I mean, it's got a ground floor extension, first floor and second floor. And what we applied for was first floor. And we were told that 2 points. First of all, the shallow closet wing that you'll see, which you'll see ours at above the white outrigger, and number 10 still exists at ground floor. We were told that those shallow closet wings should be preserved, and that's in accordance with the Historic England document I referred to. With 2 points. The shallow closet wing would be damaged, and also we would ruin the amenity and enclose upon number 12.
Despite the fact number 12 has a 2-story one itself.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and the point about which I think one of your councillor colleagues is getting at is there hypocrisy? And number 12 said, of course there's a hypocrisy, but you will ruin our amenity, and we've lived in our house for however long they'd lived in, and we will be enclosed upon, and our amenity will be damaged.
I see. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you. And could you tell me, do you accept that all of the outriggers of, I think, is it 7 to 12, came out the full depth originally to what is now proposed by number 10? So the pergola, you accept, do you, that the pergola is a 1950s replacement, and that there was a full depth outrigger there before?
No, we don't, and it may be helpful, Chairman, for you to hear from Dr. Doggett, who is our heritage expert, who has submitted a report.
Yes, I read that. Thank you.
I don't know whether you want to hear from us or from him, but what is accepted is the lower ground floor wasn't extended, but the ground floor closet wing was not extended. So although if you look at our outrigger painted white, only the lower ground floor one existed originally, and the upper ground floor, also in white, the second window up, was added in 1895 or later.
But they were added to all 6, I think, properties there.
No, they were done at different times.
Yeah, we don't know where the lower ground floor was. Probably dates from the 1865, the OS map, but the upper ground floor, certainly in our building, was from the 1890s, and it's been shown by the brickwork, which we did submit in our evidence to the council. But I think in terms of detailed questions on heritage, I do think maybe Dr. Doggett's best placed.
I think that would be very helpful. Dr. Doggett, could we hear from you on that point, please?
Certainly. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm ready just to reiterate what Mr. and Mrs. Raw have been saying. The outriggers are later additions to the building. To call them original or early additions to the building, as the officers have done, is, in my view, misleading. The other important to make is that the original closet wings, rather than the extensions to them, are what is most significant about the rear elevation of these terraces. And the Historic England guidance, which was circulated to members, does make it very clear that where you have original closet wings as opposed to extensions to them or outriggers, every effort should be made to preserve those intact. And of course, at ground floor level, on number 10, the original form of the closet wing is clearly visible and intact. So to arguably reinstate a later extension that obscures that and to call that a heritage benefit does seem to me extremely misleading.
But you do accept, do you, that the outrigger of number 10 was previously built out the same as number 11? Where the pergola is, there was previously a building or a room?
There was a structure of some kind there until 1959, when it was demolished. And of course, the terrace as a whole was listed some 10 years later. So that extension to the listed building had disappeared at number 10 at the time that the terrace was listed.
I see. But the likelihood is it, would you accept that 7 to 12 all had two-story outriggers, i.e. lower ground floor and ground floor, added at about the same time in the 1890s? I think that's what I've understood.
Yes, they did undoubtedly have 2-story additions to the original closet wings, but they were all added at different times. As we've seen, we've got a taller one still at number 12. That existed, I believe, before listing.
And number 12's, I can't really tell from the photograph, and probably couldn't tell anyway, but we think that outrigger all went on at once, do we? That's not an additional 2 stories on top of an earlier 2-story.
I think it is conceivable, actually, that is a further addition to the 2-story.
I see. Okay. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. And just going back to Mr. Raw and Ms. Malincrot, could I please ask you, because I don't think your light expert, I believe, is called Waldron. I don't think they are present on the call today, but just wanted you to help me with the daylight and sunlight points. I saw some reference to 100% reduction in winter sunlight. Does that mean, if you give my ignorance, that presumably must mean direct sunlight where you can actually see the sun? Because I can't imagine otherwise one could possibly have a 100% reduction in light, because that would mean that it went pitch black. Have I understood that correctly, as you understand it?
I'm afraid, Chairman, I don't know, but it's the assessment under the BRE guidelines for winter sunlight. So it's assessed by, as I understand it, the winter sun is low in the sky, which is why I made the point about our skylight in our conservatory doesn't assist in terms of mitigating the loss of winter sunlight. Winter sunlight is an assessment, and I'm no technical light expert either, which is why we commissioned the report. I'm not sure it is necessarily direct sun that you can see, but it's the sun when it's low in the sky that is coming through between September and March.
Okay. I mean,
but the reduction quite clearly from the report, and you'll see that in the appendix to the report that we submitted with our objection, is that we will lose 51% of the sunlight through the conservatory windows throughout the year, and all 100% of the winter sunlight, when obviously winter sunlight is most precious.
Yeah, so that can't be 100% of the light. It must be some other measure, and I don't quite understand how that is arrived at. But
I can have a look in the report and see whether I can assist you.
No, well, don't worry about it now. But I think it must be something else, because clearly having actually, if you could go back, Ronaldo, to that 2 photos ago, one before that. No, and again, sorry, there we are. So if I've understood correctly, that flank garden wall there, where that trellis is and the wisteria climbing over the pergola, that would be solid.
Exactly.
As planned.
I think that where the brickwork drops to another level, out that far would be the extension, and there would be a solid brick wall up to the sort of top of the trellis there, and then there'd be a landing projecting even further into the garden at the end of it, which would mean that landing would be pretty well, I think, where our top of our garden wall is, the party wall. So somebody standing there would be, more or less on that party wall.
I see. So there would be some risk of overlooking as well there. I suppose on the flip side of that, if that wall becomes solid in the trellis and is solid bricks, I don't think there are any windows proposed in that. There'd possibly be less overlooking, which was, I think, a point made in.
May I contribute to the daylight comment from before, please?
Actually, no. I'm afraid not. If we ask any questions of you, we will give you the opportunity to comment, but otherwise, no, I'm afraid.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Maybe Ronaldo could assist.
Thanks very much. No, we may give you the opportunity, but nonetheless asked. That's how we work, I'm afraid. Okay. Yeah, Mrs. Malincrot, just on the point we were discussing.
Thank you very much. One of the points I made in my 3-minute submission, slightly more than that, was that when the first floor extension was discussed at number 11 and the detrimental impact to number 12, one of the points the inspector made was because we have an existing terrace at first floor level, which overlooked number 12. And the inspector specifically said, even though any extension of ours would potentially be of marginal benefit in terms of preventing the overlooking, that overlooking was not did not outweigh the concerns of number 12, as we have now a constant and permanent solid extension that would enclose them. So the overlooking is a minor point in comparison to the detrimental impact of a solid brick wall.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's helpful. Thank you very much. Councillor Idris, I think you've got another question for someone. Please
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a question actually for the owners of number 11. In nicer times when the wisteria is full, how does it affect your daylight?
One of the photographs we submitted showed sunlight coming through the wisteria, coming through the trellis, and precisely because we will lose our winter sunlight, there's no vegetation on it in any event during winter. The short point is it doesn't impact. We get all the benefit of seeing down the terrace and sun from the south. So it doesn't affect us. We get the whole benefit of it, and that will go as a result of a solid brick wall.
Okay, but I mean, so the wisteria doesn't grow full enough for it to block, because I've seen wisteria when they're in their full bloom, they become like a wall.
No, I mean, we cut it back on our side, but you'll see from the photograph that's currently before the committee that, in fact, there's none on the pergola between us and our conservatory. There's a sort of rather knotted, mature wisteria with some vegetation on the corner, but it doesn't spread along the trellis and the pergola at all.
Okay, thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. And then I have a question for Ms. Kasparian, if I may. And that is, I know you're not the architect, but are you able to help me with this small window from the proposed ground floor in the party wall with number 9? Seems rather curious arrangement that is proposed there. That one is helpful. Section DD on the right there. What's going on there, and could you talk us through that, please?
Sure. The side elevation of number 9, they have a small window. It is very small, maybe a foot high, less than a foot wide. It's obscurely glazed and non-opening, and I believe it serves a WC. And we engaged with them during, over the course of the last year or so, and provided the section which you can see on the right, which provides a kind of a cut into our infill extension to enable them to continue to use their window, not blocking it up, but they can keep using it as they do at the moment, and the extension wouldn't impact on them at all.
And we may or may not explore this with officers in a second, but that has been approved, has it, or sort of signed off by our heritage officers and conservation officers?
Yeah, all in agreement and in support with conservation officers. On that, just to note, on the plan form, it would look like a rectangle around the window, so you wouldn't kind of see it from the rear garden. It's purely on the plan form that you would see that kind of slight irregularity.
Yeah. And then I think, Mrs. Kasparian, I wouldn't let you speak earlier on the light point, but I think I should give you the opportunity to tell us now about the light.
Sure, thank you. So, so noted that the conservatory window would have a small reduction in terms of sunlight, and there are numbers that go with the assessment under BRE guidance, which is very technical. And the Waldrum's report, which was prepared by the residents at number 11, failed to include the fact that there is a very large skylight in the same room. So when you're assessing the impact, it's not just the impact on that window, it's taking into account all of the windows that serve a room and the overall impact that any loss that occurs to one window might be balanced off to the room as a whole.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. All right. Well, colleagues, do we have any further questions to any of the parties at this stage? Otherwise, we'll move on and talk to Mr. Polalilo and Mr. Taylor if necessary.
No.
I think that's a no. But was that someone speaking up?
No, I was just saying I have question for officers.
Yeah, okay. Well, just if I may thank everyone who's spoken very much indeed for your helpful comments, and they will all be taken into account. So, Councillor Idris, you would like to ask Mr. Polalilo a question?
Yes, please. In the report on a sense of enclosure, it says there is an increased sense of enclosure and experience as experienced by the occupiers of number 11. However, it is not to the extent to justify. I want to know what is the extent to justify refusal? Where is the cutoff line for it to become to justify refusal?
Yeah.
How close?
Okay. Yeah, Councillor, before I respond, I will just draw the attention of the committee to there has been an addendum circulated before, and that entails an objection from Councillor Lindsay. We received on top of his previous objections, and then today we have received 2 late representations as well, one from the applicants themselves, so they are basically introducing themselves to the committee and inviting you to go to their property if you consider that to be useful, and also from Councillor Julie Mills, who you have heard to give her statement earlier on. So that's all. So now I will respond.
Thank you. Just to add that yes, we have received all of those and read them.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so now I'm going to respond to Councillor Idris. Yeah. So Councillor Idris, this in terms of assessment of planning applications is all matters of fact and degree. So, for example, I have been a planning officer for about 16 years. So you look at the case and you take a view on each individual case. In this particular instance, we have looked at the terrace. We have established the prevailing conditions within that subgroup within the terrace. We have established that there is already a wall in there, a half-story wall in there already, and there are on top of that there are already structures in there which is see-through. We have to accept that, but nevertheless the impact in here in terms of sense of enclosure, there is no doubt that there would be an impact. However, the impact in our assessment and view would not be meaningful enough so as to warrant the refusal of the application. Okay. Yeah, so it's fact or matters of fact and degree. So
okay, thank you. I have another question.
Yeah.
You've shown us pictures of the number 11 from the back. These pictures, yeah.
Yeah.
Were these pictures taken during a site visit, or
yes.
just
Yes, they were taken by one of my colleagues who visited number 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So okay, so you did perform a site visit to number 11 to assess things for yourself from the inside.
Well, basically, I have not been at number 11.
No, I mean not you personally, but I mean the officers, because you did say somebody else was started this case before you, anyways. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. But on top of that, just to to illustrate the situation, I have been an officer in RBKC for more than 15 years now. I'm very familiar with with this group of properties. I have dealt with several applications, not just on this side of the square, but on the other side as well. So I'm very familiar with the with the context of which these properties have been developed. And also for example, this photograph you can see have been kindly provided by the previous officer who has been on site. And also on top of that, we have the aim of aerial photographs, plus the drawings, which we can all in all, they enable an accurate assessment of the proposals.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. And Councillor Ali, you've got a question for Mr. Cololillo, I think.
Yes, yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. My question to the officers is, we have been going through, in fact, we are still going through a pandemic, and officers and senior officers may not have the opportunity to visit, as you've just said, the site, specifically on property 11 and also 10. I would like to know the consultation that has been carried out lately, and what is the conclusion, because I think what's required at this type of property, or what's required for us to make a decision, personally myself to make a decision, is to have the latest information regarding about the lighting, about the council offices, and also going to the area and speaking to the residents. I see no supporters for the project, although project proposers or the developers mentioned that they have settlement, or they have settled with agreement or disagreement with number 9, but they did not mention about that, and I did not see no support. So I would like to know, officers, how did they approve or pre-approved the planning without senior officers being there?
Okay, so I'm going to say try to I think you have said quite a lot in there, councillors. So then, if forgive me if I do not respond what you are asking, but I will ask to the best of my ability. And if that is not clear enough, feel free to ask again. So basically, I think you are trying to make raise the point of pre-applications. So pre-applications, it is a service which we provide now for quite a few years, and it's not an agreement between officers and applicants, not at all. It's not an agreement. Pre-application service, merely we draw to the attention of the applicants existing policies and how we go about assessing proposals. So it's an opportunity for them to understand how we assess them and how they can make their proposals acceptable by way of amending or omitting things or improving things. So that's all what it is. In relation to the window, let's say affected window at number 9, that is a small window which doesn't serve a habitable room. And even if it is really positive and really good that the applicants here, they have discussed that with the applicants at number 9, because then they cleared any issues which could arise from that. So they got to a point where it was okay to the occupiers of number 9. But even if they were not okay with that, from a planning perspective, all in all, the setback from that window would be policy compliant. And the reason for that is the window does not serve a habitable room. It is a small bathroom in there, so it would comply with CL5. Even if they objected to that, as officers, we would consider that policy compliant, and we would recommend the application for approval. One more thing which I'm going to highlight here is that those little windows, they are not uncommon in a number of groups within RBKC. I have personally dealt with properties in Princedale Road, where they have similar windows, and also in Palace Gardens Terrace, where they have similar windows as well. And once again, they do not serve habitable rooms, and it is possible to infill the next door property with an extension, provided that you safeguard that room as far as practicable. So yeah, so as I said, if I have not responded what you raised, just feel free to clarify, and I will respond to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, Ronald, for that. I think, yes, I have said a lot in that sense, and you have fairly answered. But just to clarify, I understand the BRE meeting or the BRE application that you have, or the team has approved to come to us and to make a final decision on this, or to decide whether to go from here. I wanted to know, have you taken into account for objections from not only the local councillors, whom we have some of them here, Councillor Judy Mills, but also number 11 and beyond? Have you considered their objections, and have you met with them before putting the application through to the committee?
Yeah, the response is yes and yes. So all correspondence, all public comments, all public objections, all public support letters, they ought to be taken into account. We cannot disregard them. They are all they all form part of the assessment. So nothing here has been disregarded. Everything has been taken into account. So it is really important to us to hear our neighbors. It is really important to us to consider how proposals may affect someone, and in fact, as officers, we try to mitigate as far as it is possible by being mediators. So that response, yes. In relation to meeting the objectors, the main objectors, number 11, yes, we have met with them. We have had the pleasure to speak to them. We had a virtual meeting with them, which lasted over 2 hours, and in that meeting, I was present. Mr. Derek Taylor was present. Our design and conservation officer, Mary Kearns, was present, and her manager, Sarah Buckingham, was also present. So the objectors here, they have been given the benefit to meet with a number of us for a lengthy meeting, which lasted over 2 hours. In that meeting, they brought on board their heritage consultant and their architects as well. So it was very useful, very informative to us. And only after that, we sat together again virtually, and we concluded on the proposals by assessing everything and responding to all the points raised.
My last question, Chairman, if you allow me. I think, would you be interested, or would you be willing to visit? I understand virtual meetings can take up to 2 hours or even 3 hours, but being in the property, seeing exactly what can change when development is being granted for the neighboring properties. As a senior officer now, been working in the borough for the last 15 to 16 years, would you, will it be helpful for you to visit and to actually assess the situation, not just previous officers, but senior officers to be there and give us a detailed report, and in fact to reach out to other neighboring who may have concerns about this development?
I think in this case, there is no need for that. Firstly, we are going through a pandemic, so we are not being able to do that. We love to visit objectors when they request, but at the moment that is not possible. And on top of that, I have been provided with a number of photographs from the previous officers. And by the way, Mary Kearns is a senior officer herself as well. Simon is a planning officer, so she's not senior yet, but she's been on site. And also Mary Kearns, who happens to be a senior officer, she has been on site. And as you can see from the photographs we have in here, they have been taken inside from number 11. So these photographs are high-tech photographs, they are very clear, and all in all, there is no need for me to go to the property. As I said to you, I go to these properties quite often, and all in all, I'm confident that in this case, the proposals should be approved, and that's why I have recommended the application for approval. That's not to say that there would not be an impact. There would be an impact, but the impact would not be sufficient enough to warrant the refusal of application, in my humble officer's opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think I should just say for the record that I believe I'm right in thinking that the planning department received probably thousands of applications for planning permission a year, and do not routinely visit every property where permission is sought. And that's perfectly normal. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But the crucial thing is that they require sufficient information to reach a view. And it seems in this case that they've decided that they've got sufficient information. I don't know if Derek Taylor would like to add anything to that. I understand you'd like to make a comment on something.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Ali's question, because he did mention senior officers specifically at one point as part of his question. And I just merely wanted to confirm that obviously the test that as the senior officer signing off a report for presentation to committee, that one of the key tests that I'll always apply is, do we have enough information as officers to come to a properly informed and well-balanced decision? And that's effectively, of course, is the same question that you as committee members will be asking yourselves. And in this instance, we actually have a wealth of information, taking it from our own records, from the appeal records for the neighbours, from previous applications on this property. There's actually a wealth of historical information with photographs from different years taken over a few years. On top of that, we've actually been furnished with a lot of useful information by the neighbours themselves, and also a lot of very good, well-presented supporting information from the applicants. And actually, in my view, although I haven't been physically to the property, I would say that we actually have a very well-informed suite of documents, well presented, and that there is sufficient information here to gauge the impact on neighbours and the impact on the conservation area and the listed building quite properly.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. While you're on, as it were, may I ask you about an important point made by Councillor Mills in her submissions, and that was about the Norland Neighbourhood Plan. Clearly, these neighbourhood plans that have been put together in a long and laborious process by local people are very important and must be taken into account. And I believe they're given statutory weight in the decision-making process. Could you just set our minds at rest that the Norland Neighbourhood Plan has been properly taken into account here? And are there any conflicts between it and the local plan or other planning policy?
Yes, certainly, Chairman. The Norland Neighbourhood Plan is part of the development plan for the purposes of Section 38 and for decision making. So the London plan and the local plan for the Royal Borough and the Norland plan together form the three parts of the development plan that are relevant for these proposals. The Norland plan actually contains three policies. They are identified in the report. There are three relevant policies: policy N1 that concerns listed buildings, policy N6 that concerns conservation areas, and policy N3, which is a general townscape policy. The Norland plan policies don't tug in a different direction to local plan policies for listed buildings or conservation areas. The policies really sit sort of in tandem with each other. They all have the same objectives, and the conclusion when you apply the Norland plan policies is that these proposals are actually in compliance with them, just as they are in compliance with development plan policies in the local plan. So that the Norland plan policies on this occasion are not compromised by the proposals and have certainly been taken into full account.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. And then I have a question, two questions actually for Mr. Colalilia and Councillor Wade. I'm conscious that you also will have a question, and I think Councillor Durin, you wanted to ask one of officers earlier, so I haven't forgotten those. But Mr. Colalilia, you mentioned at one stage a roof terrace, and perhaps you could just expand on that. We covered it rather briefly. Is there a roof terrace involved here, and where is it? And perhaps we could see an elevation.
Yeah, let me just. Yeah, so basically we are showing number 11 now, but I will just illustrate. As you can see where the gentleman is standing over there, there is a little balcony or terrace in there. So their arrangement being proposed at number 10 would be similar to that. So as it stands, we have this one, which was 1 story infill extension. And then I'm just going back to the drawing there to show you. So this is a cross section. So we can see at the lowermost floor level, there is the infill extension. And then at raised ground floor level, there is an infill extension. Again, it's a cross section, and directly to the front of it, there is a small terrace, stretch of terrace in there. So let me just go back. So that one, where you can see the glazed, the double story glazed infill extension. In between, then there are some railings in there. So that is the position of the terrace. So
I see. So just to be clear, I sort of for some reason in my head think of a roof terrace as so I don't know why, but I was thinking you meant a roof terrace was proposed on top of the bit of outrigger that is proposed, but I see there it actually says no access from French doors due to railings.
No.
So there's no suggestion of using that area on top of the proposed outrigger if we were minded to.
Not at all.
As a roof terrace.
Not at all. And in fact, Councillor, I have, in order to prevent that happening, there is a recommended condition, which I'm just looking to see which number here to prevent. So condition number 5, recommended condition number 5, the roof of the rear raised ground floor level extension hereby approved shall not be used at any time as a terrace or / amenity area. So even though there are terraces at both adjacent sites, we do recognize that the formation of a terrace in there would enable anyone walking in there to look straight down into the glazed, partly glazed roof of Mrs. Malincrot Conservatory extension. So it would be, there would be a identified harm in there. So in order to prevent that, we have been cautious by recommending that condition so as to prevent the use of that area as such.
What I know you've talked a bit about the small window with number 9. I mean, that troubles me slightly, I must admit. In design terms, do we really think that's good? It seems rather. I think the Kensington Society called it a rather Heath Robinson solution, and I see what they mean by that.
Yeah.
It does seem just not. Actually, it might have been the Norland Conservation Society, but one or other of the letters didn't approve, and I can see why. Could you just talk to us about that, please?
Yes, I can. I think perhaps the most harm of it would be the practicalities of having that space lost within the applicant's own rear extension. But if you look at the proposals from the rear, you are not going to see it at all because it will be behind the structure. So you are not going to see it at all. And as I said, this is not uncommon. It could be that the Kensington Society or whoever has raised that point hasn't come across this sort of design response before. But as an officer, as I said to you, I have dealt with similar cases in the past. And the most recent one, I think it was at number 25 or number 27 Princedale Road, if I'm not mistaken. So there, I also have dealt with another one fairly recent, I think within the last year, at number, if I'm not mistaken, number 13 Kensington Palace Gardens. So it is not an uncommon way to address that situation. So
and
overall,
just so I understand, sorry, does it? Looking at the proposed rear elevation on the left there, I see that what they're suggesting is to have one bit higher than the other, presumably so that the door behind with that slight arch to it sits within the proposed glazed area. And then am I right that that sort of slanting thing to preserve the light to the window of number 9 sits just to the left of that higher bit, and then presumably then there's a full width glazed bit that sits closer to us as we're looking at it. Is that right? It's in a sort of little sorry, I didn't describe it very well, but is it in that little
light well? Yeah.
It's forming a little light well in that left-hand image.
Yeah.
Between the higher bit of glazing and the lower bit of glazing, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's in effect forming a light well to enable some light to permeate through that little loo, which is in there at number 9.
I see. And then Mr. Rohr or Mr. Malencrot made the point that there were steps proposed coming out from the new proposed outrigger that would effectively sort of run level with the top of their boundary garden wall.
Yeah.
So can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, let me just. So this is the existing situation. So there is already a circulation route through there. So what they are proposing, so as you can see there, the steps and the terrace. So now we are going to this situation. There would be a small platform in there and the stairs against the wall. So
could you just get back to the before? Sorry to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm. So it's only marginally within.
So it's moving about a foot closer to the wall, perhaps?
That's right, yes. So my assessment is, so basically, yes, it is closer to the wall, but overall it wouldn't have a significant impact on the occupiers of number 11. And the reason for that is because that is a location where you do not stop to have a glass of wine or to have a cigarette looking back onto the properties. If you're standing there, you are most likely going to the garden or coming back from the garden. And even if you're stopping there for a couple of minutes to have a cigarette, you are unlikely to step in there and look back onto the properties. Even if that was the case, it would be no different to the existing situation where you already have a terrace in there. So all in all, it is replacing something marginally closer to the wall, but all in all, the impact would not once again be significant enough if compared to currently existing situation. So that is a platform and not a terrace. On top of that, we have to. It is important to remember that this wall has trellising. So once again, views. Firstly, views would be set further away from Mrs. Malencrot's breakfast room. As it stands, you can stand in the terrace existing at the application site and look straight into their rooms. In this case, you would have a wing in there and it would be behind that. So it would be a fairly transient location, that wouldn't, plus you would have the trellising on the wall, which already exists. So So owing all, there wouldn't be any significant impact compared to currently existing situation where there is already an access route in the stairs, steps and so on.
Yes, I think that's the key point, isn't it? That it's effectively there at the moment, what is proposed, so almost no change. So really what we're looking at is this laundry room in the outrigger, replacing the pergola, and then what's shown there as pantry. That's effectively what's new. All right.
I do not see the pantry thing. Let me just see.
Yes,
that is new.
Exactly. Tiled.
Yes, that is the raised floor level of the double-story infill extension. So we are looking at the raised floor level of the double-story infill extension. So pantry, yeah. To the front of it, we have, or to the right side of the screen, we have the terrace, and then to the north or to the top side of the screen, we have the closed wing extension.
And they're proposing to remove the white paint that's there at the moment, aren't they? And to have exposed London stock brick.
It's one of the benefits they are proposing to as a package. Improvement to justify the double-story extension, which basically in 2016 we granted permission for a double-story extension within the site. So that is a material planning consideration because planning policies haven't changed substantially since then. So what has been sought in here is, as part of that 2016 assessment, we agreed with them that they should provide some listed building benefits. And one of the identified listed building benefits then was the removal of this paint, so that looking from the back gardens or from the rear of the Princedale Road properties, you can appreciate that the glazed extension is the later date addition to the building. You can appreciate the original internal parts of the property. So by the removal of the paint, which would normally be originally be an external part of the site of the property.
I see, and obviously the laundry room that's proposed, which would be new build as it were, would presumably be in stock brick as well, London stock brick.
It would be, and also we have conditions, as you probably could see from the recommendation. There are conditions we would ask. A brick sample panel, so as to make sure that the proposals would be high standard and compatible with the remainder properties within this enclave 7 to 11.
I see. Okay, well, that's very helpful. Councillor Wade, I'm sorry you've had to wait quite a long time. You have a question for Mr. Cololino.
Going back to number 9, in diagram number 9, I have to agree that the rear, have you got the picture of number 9? I do agree that I think that is Heath Robinson. I think that actually obscures the door, which must be a feature. But also that given the fact there's an Article 4 directive and these are listed on the rear of the buildings as well as on the front, references have been made about the depth and the height of this extension and how that actually impacts on the properties behind. We've been listening to comments about number 11 and number 9, but there have been references to the properties behind who say that they have a very clear view of the rear elevations of these buildings, and this is effectively this application is effectively asking for not only an extension to replace, but also infilling effectively a light well. So it's deeper, isn't it?
Okay, so I was just trying, let me just go back to the site plan. Oops, here. So we can see that this group, the properties, they have been the 7 to 11, which we talk a lot in here. The rear closed wing are deeper than the rest of the eastern side group. So this subgroup originally has always had rear closed wings, which are deeper than all other properties.
Can I intervene at that point?
Yeah.
I understand that these 4 buildings were built at the same time, and therefore, even though they are within a terrace, that these 4 buildings were built at the same time.
Yes, yes.
And therefore, shouldn't the references be, if we're having trying to retain the short closet wing, shouldn't the arguments be that we should be trying to retain what is of that those original 4?
Can I just intervene? Sorry, I just want to check that we've all understood this correctly, because I think there's maybe some confusion here. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Colilile, that 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, so 6 properties, have at ground floor level deeper closet wings, outriggers. And at first floor level, they vary. I think 3 of them have shallow closet wings. There we are. I think there was a better photo still somewhere.
Yes.
There, that'll do. That'll do. There we are. So I think everyone is agreed that 7 to 12, so 6 properties at lower ground and ground floor level at one stage in the 1890s had deep outriggers added. Later than the original building, but
well,
Victorian.
Yeah, we don't know that, Councillor. It's just because we couldn't say for certain as to whether they have been added later or if they are original to the design. All what we could conclude is that they are old enough to be of historic importance.
Right. Well, I think we can agree that there were Victorian outriggers that were deeper on 7 to 12, at least up to ground floor level.
Yes.
And then 9, 10, and 11 that we're looking at there have shallow closet wings, outriggers, whatever you call them, at first floor level, and then 8 and 12 have something different, and we can't see 7. So I think that's the point. So just if that helps, Councillor Wade, on what you were saying.
Yes, it's just in some of the objections, people are saying that the introduction of a double height conservatory area, which fills effectively the air well and going up, is overdevelopment of a space. And they make much emphasis about how you can read the brickwork. But in fact, I would have said that looking at diagram 9, I think it actually obscures part of the rear elevation, especially around that door. I think it's actually rather clumsy. I understand the reasons for number 9, because of the window, but I do feel that it's just rather clumsy.
Well,
and it's the top bit just makes the door look off center. the center bar of the middle section cuts straight through the door, which should be a feature. And it just doesn't seem to be in keeping. There doesn't seem to be any, if this is supposed to be, if an application is supposed to seek to improve and enhance, this does neither.
Okay. Is that a conclusion, Councillor, or do you want, or are you asking me a question?
No. I'm just saying, would one say this is a very sensitive site, and that an application to do something is the aim and objective is to seek to improve and enhance?
You're right, yes, you're correct in that. However, in this case, what I would draw your attention is that the double-story infill extension, as it stands, they have one single-story infill extension which has a barrel-shaped roof. So it is already higher than any ordinary single-story extension. So that one is reaching the end of its life, and will be beneficial to a degree to replace that structure with a improved structure. So as it stands, we are replacing that structure with a double-story infill extension. So as I said before, in 2016 we already allowed planning permission for a double-story extension in there, and the justification by the conservation officer was that there are a number of double-story re-extensions within the square. So that is one of the reasons why the officer justified her approval. So that approval, which although hasn't been implemented, is a material planning consideration, so to be taken into account. But
sorry, has that expired, that planning permission?
I can check now, just hold on a second. Presumably it may have, but let me just see.
Is that extension, is that infill actually deeper, or is it the same footprint as the original, the replacement, what it's seeking to replace?
If you could ask again, Councillor Wade, just to make sure that I understood. Yes.
That seems quite bulky.
Okay.
I just wondered whether because there have been references in the residents' letters coming in about it. The impact on the rear of the building seems to be rather oppressive, overbearing. And I just wondered whether it's actually deeper than the other infills, because I think that if the other people are having to conform to, I think the lady mentioned, was it 14, the 9 and 11 having to conform to a certain depth.
Yeah.
Does this conform to that depth?
So Councillor, in fact, if we look at, we are looking now at existing lower ground floor drawing. So as you can see there, the light well is fully infilled. So the existing barrel-shaped extension lines up with the rear elevation of the rear closed wing. So what we are, in that respect, what we are achieving is an improvement in that it would be set further back. So there is an improvement in that. I do appreciate that the infill extension at this level, at the occupiers of number 11, is deeper, is set further back. However, in this case, these guys already benefit from an infill extension at that level, which is much deeper. So there is an improvement in that respect. As it stands, it's not subservient at all. And what we are achieving, it's something which would appear subservient at that level. So you would be able to distinguish the rear closed wing and the later date infill extension. At raised ground floor level, there is a new element in there. However, that new element will be substantially set back. So its visual impact will be much lessened because it will be sandwiched between both solid rear closed wings, and it will be very discreet back. the conservation officer desired that this extension should be fully lightweight. However, as you can see, the roof is a little bit more solid. However, we had to concede on the fact that we have approved something similar at number 11 with a more solid roof. And that's the reason we have accepted this again here with a more solid roof. Another point which I was going to make, the clerestory on top, it looks bulky, it may look clumsy, you may call that, but in reality, the extension at number 11, I'm not picking on the extension at number 11, I'm just comparing because it happens to be the most comparable of them all. The extension at number 11 has a sloping roof. So basically, it has a eaves level which is slightly lower than the overall height of the double-story rear solid closed wing, but then it slopes up and meets the top of the original rear wing header. Meets the top of the rear elevation original window header.
That's where you can see that sort of that light coming through.
That's right, yes. So then it has a sloping roof, but the one which is being proposed now at number 10 has a flat roof profile. However, in terms of avoiding any clash with that window, they propose this clerestory, which is not full width and which is substantially set back, so it would not appear as an overbearing element in there. And once again on that, I can say to you that I have dealt with a similar case on the western side of the square, and it was considered to be an appropriate design solution to avoid any clash with that window once again.
Mm. Can I just check, please, Mr. Cololile?
Yes.
The infill extension that is proposed, it's further back than the barrel roofed conservatory that's there at the moment. Could you go to the plan, please?
Yes, so let's go back 1, 2, 3. So
that'll do.
Yeah.
So it's set back. Can't remember. Did someone say it was 1400? No. It can't be that much. 500.
I thought it was 500, half a meter, but you know, it's more or less 400 to 500. Yeah.
Is that distinction between the outrigger and the what's going to be a bedroom here? Is that the same as the Raws have on their house at number 11?
It is not. For so let's go to the photographs. So theirs is more recessed, as you can see over there. Oh, let me get a closer up photograph. So theirs is more recessed. Their
infill extension doesn't come forward as far as the one that is proposed at number 10.
No. However, you probably saw that, and you probably understood what I'm trying to say here. But having said that, what I'm trying to reiterate to the attention of the committee is that in this instance, we already have a full-on infill historic extension at that level. So, which has been in place for a considerable number of years. So that extension is not subservient at all. In fact, it competes with the solid extension. What we are achieving here is an improvement over that situation where it would be set back.
Which is therefore more compliant with the English Heritage or Historic England guidance that
and the council's and the council's policies as well, CL9 in particular, which requires later date infill extensions to be subservient so that they can be read, so that you can read the original parts of the property and what came in later, which would be the case here as proposed, and which is not the case as existing.
And sorry to press the point, but the 2016 permission.
Yes.
What, in terms of the distinction between the closet wing and the infill extension, did that permit?
Okay, I think I have. I'm really sorry to say, but I haven't. I have inspected the drawings, but I don't remember all the particulars because it's an older application. But I read today.
I think it's described in our pack.
Yes.
Removal and replacement of lower ground floor level rear extension, addition of glazed conservatory at raised ground floor.
Yeah. So we would have something similar, but the design would be slightly different. The design, right. But in terms of footprint and form, it probably would be similar with a recessed upper level and and something similar, equivalent to what we have at lower level.
So the difference between what was approved in 2016 and what's now being sought is simply the building out of the outrigger where the pergola is.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that's sort of the crux of the application, isn't it, really? Because, as you say, we have to give very significant weight to the fact that a permission, albeit probably expired, was granted in 2016 for the infill extension.
Well, and in that point, it has expired in December 2019, so not long ago, when the applicants were attempting to submit their first application, because there has been a withdrawn application. Officers advised them, withdraw, it's not acceptable, apply for pre-application so that we can guide you, and that's what they have done. In between, that permission has expired. But as I said to you, the main important we cannot lose sight of, it's a fairly recent decision and planning policies haven't changed substantially. So it would be inconsistent to us to have permitted that and then now say, sorry, you can't have that one because policies haven't changed since. So yeah, so basically that's what I'm trying to explain.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And Councillor Dorian. Sorry, it's taken so long to come to you.
No worries, Chair. I think most of my questions have actually been answered in the discussion so far. Just one quick question, really, for Mr. Colarillo. In considering the recommendation, how much reference, if any, did you make to the Norland neighbourhood plan?
Well, as Mr. Derek Taylor said, it is part of the plan, and both sets of policies, local plan policies and the Norland plan policies, they are assessed alongside, so they are not substantially different one from another. So their aims are there hasn't been a clash between policies in here, and if there was a departure or a conflict with policy, that would have been stated as part of the assessment of the application. There are some instances where there is a clash with policy and the proposals may still be justifiable, but we have to cover that as part of the proposals. In this instance, both sets of policies are compatible, and we don't consider, it's not our view that the proposals did conflict with any of the local neighborhood plans policies.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Well, thank you all very much. I think we've had a fairly wide-ranging discussion, and hopefully there are no further questions for officers at this stage. Colleagues, do any of you have a view that you'd like to express on what your feeling is regards this application? Well, shall I say what I think? I mean,
yes, please.
It's clearly pretty finely balanced. We've heard that the arrangement with the window at number 9 is perhaps suboptimal, and we've also seen what's there at the moment. So both that metal staircase that you see on the right, which is proposed remains in a pretty similar form, and the barrel vaulted conservatory that blurs the distinction between the closet wing and the infill extension, and it's proposed that that will be set back somewhat. We've also heard about the history and the outriggers and the height of the outriggers, and the fact that in the 1950s, it seems, someone decided to get rid of the room that was at the time built of masonry and replace it with a pergola. And effectively, what we're now considering is the replacement of that room. We've heard that they're probably not original outriggers, and we've also heard about the importance of preserving the shallow outriggers at first floor level. We've seen what is proposed in terms of removing paint, and heard that that's a good thing, at least from a heritage perspective, or that's what is submitted by the applicants. We've also seen what all the neighbours have, 9, 11, and the much larger outrigger at 12, and it's a very difficult decision. Clearly, I think a very important point for me is that when you take into account the 2016 permission that, although it's expired, but has to be given significant weight in planning terms, and it was approved to build an infill extension. It comes down to what we're looking at today is principally the outrigger point, and it seems that what we're effectively doing here is deciding whether number 10 can have a room that's similar to numbers 9 and 11 and 12, and deciding whether the loss of light and sense of enclosure that would have on, in particular, number 11 is sufficient to prevent us allowing number 10 to put back the room that was there previously. And I have a difficulty, I must say, in denying permission to number 10 to do precisely what all the other houses either side have done, and to have a room that was in fact there until someone chose to remove it in 1959. So I think that's a rather long-winded way of saying that I'm minded to grant permission for this application. I've thought quite carefully about it and done an awful lot of reading about it, but I think when it comes to a vote, that's the direction I'm going. So, colleagues, if any of you want to put forward an opposing view, please do so, or do tell me if you'd like to support what I've suggested there.
I'm deeply concerned about the design. I don't deny that people should have a right to expand and to improve their homes, but actually that we have got a quite detailed information. I think the solution of the double height really does concern me. I don't think it's a suitable solution. The glazed area. I think that this is probably a work in progress, but I don't think this is something that I feel that is suitable for this location.
Well, I think that's a powerful point from Councillor Wade, and one that resonates with me. I do have trouble with the infill extension and its design.
Councillor, could I just interrupt a little? I have just been made aware by something which is highly relevant by the previous officer who has just emailed me, and I have just checked the planning history. By the way, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but it is important this. So the officer has just told me that in fact the double-story rear infill extension was partly implemented, and there was a certificate of lawfulness to confirm that it was partly implemented. So the reference is CL 198485, and it was permitted. Well, it was approved, that certificate, on the 13th of Feb 2020. That means that even if we decline to approve this application, they would still be able to fully implement that extension. By the way, that's all what I wanted to mention, which the officer has kindly brought to my attention right now.
The point is it hasn't expired, and it could be built out fully as per the 2016 permission. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yes, it has been partly implemented. Don't ask me what the particulars of that, but it says it has been partly implemented. I'm
afraid it may take a bit more time, but we're going to have to explore that point.
Yeah.
Are you saying that the infill extension, as proposed in this application, is the same as what was approved in the 2016 permission? Because if it is, that slightly undermines Councillor Wade's otherwise very good point that there are problems with the infill extension, because if the bit that she finds troublesome they can do anyway, then that gives us less reason to refuse it on those grounds.
Yes, so I'm just trying to find here.
Does it have the Heath Robinson arrangement for the window of number 9 and the clerestory?
Can I just say that this is quite late in the day for this information to come through, and that if it has come through at such a late stage, has everybody been made aware of it? Because this is, as we've seen, that there are a lot of people feel very passionately about this application. They fought very hard to establish the Norland plan, and to suddenly find this could that something has emerged at, I might say, the 11th and a half hour to support an application that they fought against may cause some problems coming down the pike. I think that if they've got an application approved to replace the outrig, that's one thing, but I'm deeply concerned about the Heath Robinson.
Councillor,
I just add, if I may, Mr. Collier, it is a bit unsatisfactory, I must admit, that this is put to us now, but I suppose in your defence it does say in our packs and the officer report that the 2016 permission was granted. It just doesn't explain that has been granted a certificate of lawfulness. Anyway, I'm just going to hear Mr. Taylor on this in a second, but as I understand it, the point is that, and I just want to have this clarified, that the infill extension, so the bits other than the outrigger pergola replacement, were granted or have been confirmed as lawful, and the 2016 permission can be built out, including the Heath Robinson arrangement. Is that right, Mr. Taylor?
Well, Chairman, I don't have the drawings to hand of the 2016 permission, but I do remember it as being a 2-storey glazed structure of quite an innovative design, actually. I mean, I don't have the drawing to hand, but certainly that was my memory, a 2-storey large glazed structure. What I would add is, in terms of weighting, I mean, the fact that a certificate was granted to demonstrate it was lawful doesn't actually change anything. It's not a new thing. I mean, anyway, you were doing exactly the right thing in terms of according weight to the planning permission and listed building consent that were granted in 2016. In fact, the relevant listed building tests have not changed since 2016. And in terms of the local plan, yes, we do have a new local plan that was adopted in 2019, but the substance of the policies that are relevant have not changed since 2016. So I think we were already on the right track, that the 2016 permission needed to be accorded weight. It's I certainly apologise for the fact that our report has not included the certificates. But all that would do is add further weight to the 2016 permission, because obviously if it has been implemented, then it should be accorded greater weight because of that. But that's really the only import of the fact we didn't include that in the history in the report.
It doesn't really help us on this problematic design element, does it? With number 9, I don't know if what Mr. Colalillo put up.
It doesn't. The drawing that I think you now have in front of you show, yes, that drawing there is showing the approved rear elevation in 2016. So as you can see, the infill
from what's now before us.
Yes, so that's the 2016 planning permission that you have in front of you. And you can see there it's a slightly innovative design in itself. Obviously, it rises above the window arch in the way that you've been discussing in relation to the present proposals. I mean, I think you can see it clearly there. So that has been implemented. I keep using the word implemented, but just for the committee's benefit, all that needs to be done is a material operation which is sufficient to do something of that, and that can even be internal. So the test in terms of lawfulness for implementation is actually, it can be something quite minor. It just has to be something physical that is part of the permitted proposal. And that's why the certificate would have been granted.
Mr. Taylor, can I ask a question? Looking at the drawings we have in front of us here, there seems to be one significant omission, which is actually the build out on the outrigger. You got the double glazed section, but you don't have the build out on the outrigger.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I was saying that what is the crux of the issue before us tonight is the build out of the outrigger and the pergola, because the infill extension has already been granted, and what we didn't know was what the previous infill extension looked like, and now we see what has been implemented and could be built out in full.
That's quite correct, Chairman. Yes.
Thanks. So I suppose one of the points we have to weigh up in this rather sort of knotty, difficult debate is if we were to refuse permission, then it might be that the applicant went ahead and built that, and then came back speculating on the outrigger at a later date, or it might be better to approve what's before us and be able to control that by condition. Well, or to be able to say that we prefer what's proposed as the current infill extension to what was proposed at 2016 and could otherwise be built out. Your thoughts, Mr. Taylor?
Well, Chairman, as I was saying, the certificate demonstrating that the two-storey glazed infill could be lawfully built out is definitely a material consideration that builds on what you knew anyway. The wholly new element, obviously, is the single-storey addition to the closet wing. And I think we've sort of assessed that as far as can be done. What I would say, just to wrap it up, is that context is king. Context is so important in any planning decision. And I think you have the measure of the context here, where there are extensions at that height and to that depth on the majority of buildings in the group. And that's something that's rammed home all the time by appeal inspectors. I mean, context is so important. So I think you've summarised the position in relation to the rear extension quite succinctly.
Mm. Mr. Colalilia, could you just flick to the photograph that shows all the rear views again, please?
Oh, let me just.
I think one further. And again. There we are. Okay. So, colleagues, you've heard all that. Sorry, we've gone on rather a long time, but what we have to decide is whether we like the application that's before us tonight. So with the different infill extension and the built-out replacement for the pergola at ground floor level, or whether we don't like it and therefore should reject it. I think, having heard those additional points, my view remains that on balance it is acceptable. I'm not wholly happy with the clerestory arrangement and the Heath Robinson for the number 9 window, but I'm not sure I liked what I saw was the approved 2016 arrangement either. And I think looking at the alternative compromise that the Mallinckrodt Raw household have got, well, there are different ways of doing it, but I hear, Mr. Colalilia, that the way that's proposed by number 10 has worked at other properties and is acceptable. So on balance, my view remains that this is something that I will be voting to approve. But if anyone else wants to comment, please do so. Otherwise, we will move to a vote. Councillor Ali, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we have been discussing this evening, or the discussion mainly about the properties and what number 10 wants and what number 11 does not want number 10 to have, it's never issue, and I think as a council we are here to serve all our residents. However, this discussion has taken long, as you said, and my position as we now in a pandemic time, I think my position, or at least my idea, would be to delay to make a decision on this application. I understand it will not be easy for both neighbours, but with absolute all the data, all the information that we need to make a real decision about this in the long term, is last-minute emails. I don't think, after having a long discussion, after talking about the lighting issue, the consequences of the area, and also not to deny number 10 what most of residents in the area have. I would say I think it would be good to have a complete application form next time on this, and to delay it maybe to the next meeting if that is the way forward. If not, I think my decision will be based on what information we have received so far. Thank you.
Well, I hear you, but there's always more information that one could have, and I think we've, although as I said it was a bit unsatisfactory that we didn't know about the certificate of lawfulness, Mr. Taylor has explained it doesn't really change matters significantly. So I think I am satisfied on balance that we have sufficient information before us to decide the application tonight. Councillor Wade, I think you want to make one final point.
Yes, I do. I think that what is important is, I think a site visit would have been important, because we've actually seen it just from the perspective of number 11 and number 10. We haven't seen it from number 9, because we haven't seen the pictures. So we haven't actually seen the more of the terrace itself. And I think that what is a concern is, what is the point of having Norland have a particular policy? What is the point of having, what protection is it for, to have conservation areas and saying you're going to conserve the fronts and the backs of buildings if you don't actually try and seek to conserve them? So I would agree that I think that we should have more information, because once this is done, it's done. And I think that it should be deferred until we have more information about the width. Because we can't see the context from the photographs. We can't really see what's happening in number 12, what's happening in number 9, and what's happening in number 7.
Yeah, well, I think that's the case with a lot of applications that come before us, that we have to understand the context as much as we can and satisfy ourselves that we have sufficiently understood the context from the information available, and that we can't always do site visits. In fact, they're quite rare. I think as regards number 9, it sounds as though an arrangement has been reached between numbers 9 and 10, hence the Heath Robinson arrangement for the windows. So that's presumably why we haven't got any objection or anything from number 9. Yeah, so as I've said, I think we have enough information before us to put this to a vote. The recommendation is that the committee grants planning permission with the conditions listed in section 9 of this report. I need to hear from each of the councillors individually, please, whether you're in favour of the recommendation and or whether you oppose it. I am voting in favour of the recommendation. And could you put your cameras on and your microphones and let us know how you vote, please? Councillor Idris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I vote in favour also.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Durian.
Having considered this, I vote to reject the application.
Councillor Ali.
Having considered what has been happening in the past and during the pandemic, not allowing to visit, I would reject the application.
And Councillor Wade.
I will oppose it.
That is therefore rejected by 3-2, and planning permission is refused and listed building consent. Do we need a separate motion? Presumably not, since the planning permission is has been refused.
Chairman,
sorry,
you do need to consider the planning permission and the list of building consent separately.
And do we also need to propose someone who's voted to refuse permission needs to propose the basis for the refusal?
Yes, for the planning permission which you're on at the moment, you need to complete that process by somebody has to now propose a new decision, and that would obviously be based upon a particular reason for refusal. And then should that be agreed, then that would be refused, and then you'd have to repeat the process for the list of building consent.
Right, so the
scale massing, Heath Robinsonness,
in general, the harm to the Norland conservation area.
Yeah.
If I could suggest you need to be specific, so that there are two main elements to the proposal. One is the glazed infill extension, and then the second one is the solid rear extension or outrigger extension. So when you're considering harm to the area, you'll need to decide how visible they are and what that harm would be. So you'd need to think that through, think through the two elements.
The outrigger, presumably it's the retention, the historic retention of the short short closet wing. Is that possible, Mr. Taylor? The recommendation.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by retaining. Obviously, they'd be retaining the trellis and the pergola, but they wouldn't be retaining anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, the outrigger would have actually, looking at the rear of the building, that would have been obscured, wouldn't it? You would have actually got rid of you would have that would have been filled in, and so that.
I'm not sure that I'm with you, I'm afraid. I mean, they'd obviously be retained. At the moment, they have a single-story extension.
Yes.
And so what you'd be saying is you'd prefer them to retain the single-story extension rather than change it to a two-story extension.
Yes.
And then you'd need to extrapolate what the harm would be in them making it into a two-story extension.
Could we say light? Loss of light, enclosure.
Sense of enclosure, presumably. So just to move this forward, then I think we've got loss of light and sense of enclosure are the problems with the replacement of the pergola with an outrigger at ground floor level, by the sounds of things, and there are design problems in the committee's view with the infill extension. Is that right?
I think for me that would be the key factor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Mr. Taylor or Mr. Collalillo, can you record that is the committee's motion for why they wish to oppose it?
Certainly. So that would be to reject the application for two reasons. The first one would be that loss of light and increased sense of enclosure, specifically to number 11, as a result of the solid extension. Mm-hmm. And then the second one would be a design-based reason, yes, which presumably would be that the design detail of the proposed infill would be harmful to the appearance of the building and to the character of the conservation area.
Yes.
Yes. And also, would it also be harmful to the special historic character of the listed building?
Yes.
Okay, so that would have three parts to it then.
Yeah.
Three elements to it.
So that is now the motion for the committee. We need someone to propose a motion in the terms just summarised by Mr. Taylor.
Happy to propose.
Councillor Durian proposing.
Second it. Yeah.
And Councillor Ali seconding that. I'm going to vote against that motion to be consistent with my earlier vote. Councillor Idris.
I will vote against that motion.
Again, consistent. And then Councillor Durian, you presumably having proposed it.
Favour of the motion, thank you.
Councillor Ali.
I will vote for the motion.
And Councillor Wade. Councillor Wade.
Oh, sorry. Vote for the motion.
Yeah. Okay. So, as we said, Planning Commission is refused on that basis. And we now move to listed building consent. Do we need to go through exactly the same process for listed building consent, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Chairman, you do. Just to sort of assist the process a little bit on that, the listed building consent obviously would not take into account impact in terms of light or sense of enclosure. So right. I'd suggest that the second reason there probably would be the relevant one for the listed building consents. But in the first instance, you need to consider the present recommendation and then go through the same process.
So the committee, the recommendation is that the committee grants listed building consent subject to the conditions set out in section 2. I will vote in favour of that recommendation. Councillor Idris.
I will vote in favour of that recommendation too, Chair.
And then Councillors Wade, Councillor Wade.
Against.
Durian.
Against, Chair.
And Councillor Ali.
Against.
Okay, and so we need a motion as to why it's
because it detracts from the conservation area, and the integrity of the conservation area.
And is that the only one we were going to use, Mr. Taylor?
Well, no, you need to be specific to the special historic interest of the listed building. So ultimately, you have to find that it was harmful to the special historic interest of the listed building.
I think the glazed infill is spectacularly detrimental to the historic
significance of the listed building. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And if we're happy with that, then we put that motion to the committee, and I will vote against that motion again to be consistent. Councillor Idris.
The same, against.
And Councillor Wade.
For.
Councillor Durian.
For the motion, thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Ali.
For the motion.
Okay. So on that basis, listed building consent is refused. Right. Thank you all very much, and thank you for your detailed analysis of that. Now we move to the hopefully slightly easier application at 8 Pembridge Mews. Mr. Colalilo, when you're ready. Mr. Colalilo.
Yeah, I am. Sorry about that. So, right. Yeah. So 8 Pembridge Mews. This is
Ronaldo, sorry, could I just? You just need to take control of the presentation again.
Okay, yep. Great. Thank you. Okay. So basically, this application relates to the erection or excavation and provision of a basement extension beneath the footprint of the building and beneath the entire of its existing rear light well. So this is the site, Pembridge Mews, Pembridge Conservation Area. The site is highlighted in red. These are the existing floor plans. So as we can see, there is a in the middle central drawing towards the bottom of the page, there is a light well cut out in there and a roof terrace on top of the existing later date infill extension. So it's now we go to the elevations. Oh, these are the proposals. So basically what we have here is an additional basement extension, which is the basement floor plan on the left hand side of the screen. Before we had an extension which went all the way to the back wall. So as you can see here on the existing drawings, again, there is a smaller light well, and what they are proposing is to demolish that and dig 1 story lower, creating a full width light well. That's what it is. And the roof terrace on top, I'm just going to go back slightly. Oops, sorry. Back again. Sorry about that. So here we are. The previously existing first floor roof terrace area is L-shaped, and now that one will be changed, will be reduced in size to a single full width terrace, smaller in dimensions. So now I go to the existing and proposed elevations and cross sections. So there wouldn't be any changes to the front elevation, and to the rear elevation there would be an additional floor level, which you can see on the right hand side upper drawing there is the rear elevation of the property. So the basement floor level has a lot of glazing, and the ground floor level has a lot of glazing as well. However, it's important to highlight that these two levels will not be visible. And the reason for that is because this property backs onto a substantial tall solid brick wall. So none of that would be visible. On top of that, we can see the reduced size terrace, which will be set away from the rear wall. And this is a view of Bainbridge Mills and the property. And this is a view of the existing terrace, kindly provided by the applicant himself. So that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Colilillo. We don't have any registered speakers on this one, so we will jump straight into questions to you, if we may. I do notice you say that the property backs straight onto a brick wall. There was an objection that from someone who says that the terrace at the top floor level will allow people to see into the glass vaulted roof of their studio. Can you just describe where that is and whether that's been sufficiently taken into account?
Let me just go back to the site plan. Yes, so basically, if we look at that location plan, to the red marked property is our site. So then the property on top of it, to the top of the highlighted red, that property already has a roof extension, roof terrace, similar to the one of the applicants have at their property. And then the property directly behind that property, not behind our property, but directly behind that property, has been fully built up all the way towards the rear wall. So that person has objected on these grounds. However, two important things here is we are not proposing for a roof terracing here. There is already a roof terrace in there. And secondly, the roof terrace is not coming further beyond and closer to that property, that the objector's property, but in fact it is being reduced in size and being set further away from them. So the impact would in fact be lesser as opposed if compared to existing conditions, in that we already have a larger terrace which is closer to that property.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wade, sorry, you had a question.
One of the objectors said about light from the light well. How significant do you think that the impact would be? And if it was an impact, do you think we could place a condition which meant that they had to have a blind to across it in order to reduce light pollution?
Well, the situation here, Councillor Wade, I don't think there would be such an issue in here, and the reason why is because this will be a small light well in any event, which will be set directly to the rear of the property. But this property has a very tall, substantially tall rear boundary wall, which is at least 2-story high, I would say. So then any light would be minimal and perhaps no different to the light you already experienced coming from the upper floor levels, French doors of the property and the roof terrace area.
And you're not concerned about drainage?
Drainage. This property has a very small light well. So they are proposing to excavate one additional level, fully excavating. However, the situation here is this is a very small light well which is already fully paved over, and the resulting situation, we are going to end up with a greater size light well, so a lesser footprint, let's say.
But I said about drainage, because at the moment the rest of it is tiled, so you have the ability that when the rain comes, it can drain away.
Yeah.
If you have a light well, are you satisfied that the drainage will be okay?
Yes, let me just have a look in here. Sorry about that, Councillor. Roof lights. I must say I have given so much attention to Ten Norland today, spent so much energy on that one today that I'm even, just to make sure that we are. So then 6.10, a meter of topsoil about the basement as required by CL7 would not be applicable in this instance because the extension is beneath the existing property. But let me just say, requires to protect the basement, whilst the provision of permeable paving within the rear light well is noted as a SUDS measure. So they are proposing for permeable paving in there.
And that you think that's going to work?
Yes. On top of that, we are requiring further details so that they meet with policy criteria, and that means they would have to submit further SUDS details to demonstrate that they have calculated and that they would meet the 50% improvement of which the policy requires.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's helpful. Councillor Ali, you've got a question.
Thank you, Chair. Officer Colillo, and again, thank you for the time and effort you put every application that comes to the committee now and before and hopefully later. In the meantime, I have two questions about, one is the environmental impact as well as the noise disruption, which I hope that you will give us further details about the implementation of this development and how that can be reduced to the neighboring properties. And my second question will be structural geology. The structural geology of the excavation of the basement, and is there any report for the structural geology of the area so that no problems can be caused to the nearby properties? And someone actually talked about 1800 property which has been built 1800, and is there any issue for that, and how can it be prevented for this development to cause any problems for such old property in the local area? Thank you.
Yeah, I think what I can respond in that is that basement extensions are now an acceptable way of extending in RBKC. So perhaps 97% of all buildings in RBKC are all Victorian, perhaps. A lot of them are Victorian. So the situation we would encounter here is no different to 95% of all the other basement extensions which we assess throughout the years. So in this case, they have submitted a construction method statement with details on hydrology, geology, structural calculations, and basically demonstrating that there would not be any meaningful impact on adjacent properties. Obviously, that is something which is often brought up by anyone owning a property adjacent to where a basement would be dug out. So, you know, it's a genuine concern. However, as planning officers, we can only make sure that all due process has been followed. And in this case, it has been followed. They have employed someone to do an assessment of the hydrology and geology of the site, and they have also submitted a construction method statement, identifying all the structures nearby and which impact, if any, these structures would suffer, and any mitigation measures in place. On top of this policy, which is quite strict, we also have building regulations where there would be additional safeguards to ensure that no meaningful harm would be caused to adjacent properties and or structures.
Thank you. And you have seen that report and you're happy with it? Is that the conclusion?
Yes. As part of the assessment of the application, I have to look at all the information forming part of the application pack.
Thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Councillor Idris, sorry.
Hi. Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. Well, there is already a light well in the front of the building, isn't it? But it's short, isn't it? And then they're just extending it to have it go to the full length of the of the building. Am I?
No, councillor. It's just I have to correct you in there. So
Yeah.
it is confusing because the drawings, may show one thing or another. But you can see now view of Cambridge Mills. So to the front there is no roof light. So the property, its main front door opens directly onto the cobbled mills.
Yes.
But now we go back to the drawing so that we can understand. So that one shows the cross section through the building, and it shows a light well, but the light well is in fact set towards the rear of the site. Yeah, so not to the front. Okay. And the size of the light well we can see here. This is existing.
Yeah.
The size of the light well is half width.
Yeah.
Against the rear boundary wall, and it would be enlarged. Oops, it would be enlarged by the full width against this tall, solid boundary wall directly to the rear of the property.
Okay. Okay. And my second question is there any? Do you anticipate any problems with the party wall because the building's so close? Well. I mean, it's not part of my assessment. That is a separate thing. But party wall agreements are between the owners, property owners themselves. However, as part of our assessment, we have policy CL7, which has a number of criteria which have to be met in order for a scheme to be recommended for approval. Mm-hmm. So, as part of that, we do request technical information, and i.e. the CMS, and in that they have to identify all the structures nearby, and they have to demonstrate that the proposals would not compromise the structural stability of the property itself and or the properties of adjacent buildings. And they have done that in this instance. They have demonstrated compliance with the policy. On top of that, we are recommending a condition so that they would employ a qualified engineer to oversee the implementation of the proposals. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I just wanted to check one point, Mr. Kolila, and that's about the materials to be used. Are we satisfied that they're appropriate? The powder-coated metal frames, for example, the window at the first floor level's large and very modern looking. So both design and materials. Are we happy?
Yeah, there are no changes to the front.
No, I'm talking about the one at the back.
Yeah, to the back, they would be facing. This would be a shallow light well. So in order to look down into the light well, it would need to come really close to the almost two-story rear boundary wall and look down. So in conservation area terms, they would not be harmful at all. They would be so concealed down there that you would hardly see them. So yeah, they would not have any meaningful impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area.
Okay, all right. Well, colleagues, any further questions, or anyone like to make any comments before this goes to a vote? Well, the recommendation is that the committee grants planning permission with the conditions listed in section 9 of this report. I'm going to vote in favour of the recommendation. Could I please hear from Councillor Idris?
I will vote in favour too, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ali?
I will vote in favour, Chair.
Councillor Durian?
I'm happy to vote in favour, Chair.
And Councillor Wade?
I'm in favour.
Thank you very much. So planning permission is granted on that basis. And that concludes this evening's presentation. Not presentation, meeting. Thank you all very much. Went on slightly longer than expected. And thank you, officers, for all your help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.